Although sustainability comprises three broad brushstrokes of resources or environment, the human element, of course, and prosperity, would you say that net zero is what is on your shop front at the moment? We're going for net zero.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a couple of things that were slightly unpopular here. And one of them was, we're not going to do carbon offsets, and we're not going to be doing renewable energy certificates. We're going to do accounting. We're going to do accounting properly, and we need to make sure that we actually transform the economy. So we need to look at what energy efficiency could mean in that context, right? What electrification could mean in that context, what low carbon fuels, what other technologies could play, what role other technologies could play in this whole thing. So the whole idea is to literally go, instead of doing it on a per market vertical basis, we're actually doing a horizontal approach where we are looking at energy efficiency across all aspects of the economy. We are looking at electrifying every aspect of the economy that relies on energy to produce movement, to produce work, to produce heat. And we are decarbonizing anywhere where electricity plays a role. And by doing that, we're going to make it, we may be able to reduce 80% of the emissions in the city. And that last 20% has to come from carbon negative technologies. It has to come from low carbon fuels. It has to come from just making sure that we're doing our best to get there. So at the end of the day, what we want in terms of accounting is to be net zero. And for example, we can use the waste that we have in the city coming to a wastewater treatment plant and the sludge that comes with it. That could be turned into hydrogen, that could power heavy duty electric buses, that could be turned into carbon negative biochar, for example. So we are looking at all of those things, and the expectation is that the economy will be 50% more energy efficient, 80% eliminating carbon emissions, but 90% less carbon intensive. So those are the combination of elements that we're looking into, and we're hopeful that we can actually achieve net zero.
Can you give me those percentages again, starting with 90% less carbon intensive and the previous stats?
The targets right now are reducing carbon emissions as a whole, eliminating 80% of the carbon emissions, at least. Mm-hmm. But that implies that we're going to electrify things. So we need to reduce energy intensity by 50%. And that means, unit of energy per unit of GDP. And then, we need to reduce the amount of carbon in energy by 90% at least. So that means unit of carbon per unit of energy. So at the end of the day, it's unit of carbon per unit of energy per unit of economic growth. And all that together is going to take us perhaps to 80 to 90%. And then it's all about carbon negative technologies that we're hopeful that, by the end of the decade will be more affordable, will be out there. But in the meantime, we're using the ones that we know exist, talk about planting trees, but you also can talk about, forms of carbon sequestration.
Are these the foundational tenets of your blueprint?
I wouldn't say they are the foundational tenets. I think the foundational elements of the plan have to do with democratic engagement, with workforce development, with regional cooperation. It has to do with developing a proper climate action plan and climate risk assessment. It also, has to do with the way we drive the conversation in the community, and we eventually move towards perhaps a participatory budget model. I think those are the foundational elements. And, the one thing they have in common is, it's all about people, which means, a lot of what we're doing, it has to do with climate justice. So everything that I mentioned as foundational elements, you can look at them as outputs, and climate justice is the outcome. And once you have that foundation, then you go to the infrastructure elements. which are the ones I mentioned. You are talking about electrifying buildings, electrifying cars, reducing energy intensity.
That's fantastic insight. The foundational elements have to do with engagement, risk assessment, social capital, etc., which I'd like to loop back to in particular. And then on top of that, you have a look at the technical infrastructural stuff, which produces or which you apply those types of stats that you were referring to.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, using an example, you may want to move towards, net zero buildings. So when you have a climate justice strategy, that just informs, where you need to start. And if you are, for example, in our case, relying on private capital, then climate justice translates into financial inclusion, and it translates into community wealth building, and workforce development translates into a workforce that will be targeting disadvantaged communities in terms of training curriculum and wraparound services.
Yeah.
So that's the way you inform. So the foundational elements inform the implementation of the infrastructure elements. Okay. And that is the blueprint. It's precisely that relationship. That's what we mean by blueprint.